This is Ask Joe number 185. Ah. Hey, this is Joe Gilder from HomeStudioCorner.com, also JoeGilderMusic.com, and all over the socials at Joe Gilder Music. Hope you're doing well and having a super day. As I'm recording and streaming this live, it is Election Day here in the U.S. We are voting. So there's that. And what I want to talk about today, kind of, a little bit, has to do with voting. It has to do with letting the people, listening to the people, as it were. Because today, America will voice their opinion, and theoretically, whoever becomes president will be who the people wanted. Theoretically. So, what I want to talk about today is this idea of... So here's the thing. We, as creative people, and as home studio folks, as musicians, we're in the business of creating content, right? So you may not be a blogger like me with a YouTube channel, and I'm not saying you need or have to be, but we are making content, and your content may be music. And how a lot of, if you've seen, what is that movie? It's not a movie. There's a documentary about Jerry Seinfeld, where he writes off, he retires all his old material and writes all new stuff. It's actually not very interesting from what I remember. But then there's a book, if you've read Steve Martin's autobiography, that's pretty interesting as well. The audiobook is really good. He narrates it. And in several different things I've read about comedians, I'm not a huge fan of comedy, but I've read a few things by and about comedians. And there's this great, being a comic is fantastic in the sense that you can be on stage with a crowd of people and you can deliver the same show 6 nights in a row, and pretty quickly you're going to start to get feedback in the form of laughing that you'll be able to pretty quickly say, yes, that is working. That joke works, that punchline works. And they're always adjusting and always changing and trying new things and engaging the response of the audience. Obviously, one audience isn't going to be the end all for, a good sampling of how everyone's going to respond to you. But as you kind of put all that together, it starts to give you a pretty good indication of what is working and what isn't in your act. Same thing's true with music. So if you follow me on YouTube, my YouTube channel, you will see, and I'm going to switch over on the screen so you can see this a little better. You may have noticed over the last 7 weeks, I've been releasing, I think it's roughly 7 weeks. I've been releasing cover videos where I sit down with my acoustic guitar, with my Zoom H4, Q4, I think is what it's called, little camera. It's not that, it's an HD camera. Honestly, the quality is not that great, but it does have these little mics that pop up. Can you see that? They're little XY microphones. And they actually sound pretty good. Little XY condensers, get a little stereo action. So I set this up, and I play a song. And it's cool. It's a fisheye lens, so I can get it pretty close to me and still see me and the guitar, and it's close enough to get a decent sound. It's not too far away with the microphones. Anyway, so I've done that, and I've done lots of covers. Everything from Jim Croce to David Wilcox to Randy Travis to Jeff Buckley, Nickel Creek, and the most recent one is the one I want to kind of hone in on today, which was the song "What a Wonderful World," made famous by Louis Armstrong. So they're all my versions of these songs. I changed maybe the time signature on some of them, the tempo, change it up a little bit, like you typically are used to seeing people and doing cover songs. The thing is, though, if I start to dig into the statistics, it really gives me a decent amount of feedback on what people are liking from a music standpoint. Now, I get most people come to Home Studio Corner and come to me via tutorial videos, but I'm also a musician, and it's a built-in audience of people who, some of which, like to check out my music. And what's interesting is as I release these, and I put them on YouTube, and I also put the video on Facebook as well, and I can see kind of what the response is. I can see if it gets, I can see how many views it gets, I can see how many likes it gets, and in Facebook, I can see how many shares it gets. And what I find really interesting, and I was talking about this morning with Graham Cochran, we were recording the next episode of the Simply Recording podcast, which you should certainly check out if you haven't. It's like this one, but with Graham. Probably better. And we were talking about this idea that I may think a cover of a David Wilcox song is really great. I might think it's a great song. I might think that I do a fantastic job covering it, and it sounds amazing, and it feels good in my voice, and everything is great. But then that doesn't really, it matters in the sense of I need to do stuff that I want to do, that I connect with. But ultimately, if I want to determine something, what the masses want, not even the masses, what my audience likes, I put it out there and I see how they consume it. And what's interesting is, of the 7 videos I've done, and I've got them pulled up here in front of me just by the title, so I can't see a lot of the statistics. But I've gotten decent reaction to all of them, about the same for most of them. You know, people like it. It's a fair number of thumbs up in YouTube and a fair number of shares in Facebook. But when I did the most recent one, which was the What a Wonderful World, the Louis Armstrong song, way bigger response. Like tons more shares on Facebook, a lot more likes in YouTube. It's one of my top liked videos in YouTube, and I've been doing this for 7 years. So it's in the top, 2 pages of like my top content as far as likes go. And what does that mean? I don't know exactly, other than it's the only song I've done fingerstyle guitar, and it's one of the ones where I made a bigger departure from the original song. The original song's in 6/8, and I took it into a 4/4 direction and just changed the vibe of the song entirely. Also, I did it outside. There was, kind of a beautiful background. You could hear wind blowing and hear kids playing at the park down the street and stuff like that. So it captured kind of a cool moment. Point being, I don't think I should now only do Louis Armstrong covers. Just point being, I might now take that video and promote it more. I might put it into my Facebook feed more regularly. I might actually put some money behind Facebook advertising to get in front of more people, because for some reason it connects with people, and I might get new fans and new followers as a result of that song. So by doing 7 free videos over the course of 6 to 8 weeks, I now have some market research as to which ones connect with people. And then I can take those and I can kind of double down on those, either in promoting those videos more aggressively, or by going and thinking about what worked in those videos and trying to replicate that again. As Steve in the chat says, Steve from the UK, it's a really well-known song, and it's obviously one of the oldest songs that I've done in this series, and people instantly recognize the song. So that's a big deal too. If I only do obscure songs, or, cuts from artists they know but they've never heard that particular song, it's not going to get a lot of legs underneath it anyway. So that's another interesting point. Maybe I do some more covers of songs that are more well-known that I can make my own and do in interesting ways. But anyway, that's just something to think about. I don't know. I don't have all the answers for sure, but I do think there is something to the fact, for example, with Home Studio Corner, I make a lot of tutorial videos and a lot of, memberships and lots of different ways where I actually charge for a tutorial video. So, for example, I this podcast is free. A lot of all the content on YouTube and Home Studio Corner is free, and then I have more in-depth stuff that I charge for, where you can buy a video on EQ. And I can never know which of my ideas is going to work by simply thinking about it and even asking people if they'd be interested in it. Asking you if you'd like a video about acoustic treatment is one thing, but when I create that video and I try to sell it and not many people buy it, that tells me something else. And so that's been really interesting as well. I don't think things like surveys are that helpful when trying to determine what your audience wants, whether you're a musician or a business owner or whatever. I think what really matters, they vote with their actions, whether it's pulling out their wallet and buying something, or sharing the thing that you put out, or commenting, or clicking the like button, or something like that. That's real information where they voluntarily took action because of what you did, versus giving you some sort of arbitrary feedback on a vague question that you asked them. So, for example, I use the example of acoustic treatment. I've got a product where I talk about acoustic treatment. I brought an expert in, and I pay him to create this content with me, and we split the sales on it. And it's one of my lowest selling products because it's just kind of a dry, boring topic that a lot of people don't get excited about. When I created a video on editing, I thought it was going to be really popular, and it's just not that popular. Some people really love it, but it's not like, ooh, everybody has to have that. My Understanding EQ video, for example, is one of my top sellers because people really do want to find out about EQ, and that's really a pain point for people where they really are having a hard time learning how to use it well. So all of this to say, whether you're doing music, whether you're trying to get clients for your studio, whether you are trying to promote yourself in any way, online or otherwise, it's always a good idea to know to put things out there. First of all, put yourself out there and then gauge the response. You don't have to have massive spreadsheets and run it through some sort of big data company to get insights, but you can get a good idea just from looking at the raw numbers briefly of what's working and what's not working, and then you can adjust accordingly. It's great to have a plan. It's great to have an idea. It's the same thing with producing an album. It's great to have an idea of where you want the song to go, but once you're in there with the musicians and they're playing, then it's time, if it goes in a different direction and that seems to be working, then by all means go in that direction and follow that. But having a plan to start and then responding to feedback you get, to me, I think that's one of the huge keys to success. Boom. All right, it's time for the questions. This is, of course, Ask Joe, and you must be interested in what I have to say to help you answer your burning questions about music and audio and other such things. So if you have questions for me, please, especially if you're here live on the chat, post those in the chat and I will answer them. Also, if you have a question and you can't make it live on Tuesdays, I didn't do a good job of this today, but usually I will post an announcement that morning that I'm doing the show that afternoon. Post your questions here, and I almost always get to those on the show. You can also just go to my Facebook page, Joe Gilder Music, and leave a comment on the page itself, and let me know it's for the podcast, and I'll do my best to work it in. And I don't see any Facebook questions, so we're going to jump over and do all live Q&A from all the kind folks from around the world who are here joining me live. Again, it's Tuesdays at 1 p.m. Central Time. See if you can work it out and come check it out one of the next couple of weeks. Love to have you. By the way, we've got a huge, cool turnout today. We've got folks from Hungary, Russia, Istanbul, Sweden, France, Germany, where else? The UK, Alabama, New Zealand, Nigeria, Portugal, Pittsburgh, the Netherlands, Slovenia, Minnesota. No, I'm sorry, Danny was in the Netherlands, but he's from Minnesota. So yeah, cool turnout and plenty of Americans. I'm giving all the non-Americans some love today because 3 from India, apparently. It's pretty cool. I'm seeing a little uptick in folks from India checking out Home Studio Corner, so that's kind of cool. Love it. Okay, so here is first question. This is from Keith, and this actually is about the song that I was talking about, the What a Wonderful World cover. So I did the song in the key of E, but I used a capo that I've used in maybe one of the other songs, but the way I shot the video, it was kind of right up on the neck, so you could see what I was doing with my hands really well, and you could see the capo. It's from Kaiser, and it's called a drop D capo, and it's got another name to it, like a K lever. I think that's what it's called. K as in the letter K, lever or lever. And it's a capo that I put it on the 2nd fret, and it holds down the 3rd, 4th, and 5th strings, or the G, D, and A strings. So it leaves the low E open and leaves the high B and E open, but it pushes those down. So it feels a little bit like dadgad tuning, only it's in E. And then if I'm playing that and I want to play an F sharp minor, so F sharp minor would be the bass notes on the 2nd fret, I can't really get to that. So you'll see people like David Wilcox, who plays with a lot of capos, reach their index finger over to the kind of behind the capo, if it's a cut capo, to get to a fret that they can't get to normally. Well, this actually has a little plunger deal. So there's a lever on the capo itself that's attached to just a rubber piece that pushes down on that one string. So when I'm playing that song and I want to play the F sharp minor, which if I'm on capo 2, I'm actually playing an E minor voicing, I can reach over, play the E minor, and push that down with my index finger, and it gives me that E minor chord, which is technically F sharp minor. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, I'm sorry. Go check out the video. It's over on my YouTube channel. There's a playlist there called Joe Gilder Covers. It used to be called Music Therapy till someone told me that that's an actual thing, that I shouldn't use that because I'm not a licensed music therapist. Welcome to the life of being a YouTube person. But yeah, check it out. It's What a Wonderful World. You can see it there. Sadly, I don't think they make them anymore. I went looking for them the other day, and all I could find was ones on Amazon, and they were like $40. and they were all out of stock. Sweetwater doesn't carry them anymore. That's actually the way I got it was I ordered a guitar from Sweetwater, and my buddy Luke, who I ordered it from, actually threw the capo in for free. So I got this. I'm like, what is this weird thing? I'd heard him talk about it and fell in love with it. So I use it pretty regularly when I play stuff in the key of E, especially, which I tend to write stuff in E. It fits my voice pretty well. So it's a cool little buy. They do still make the cut capos that will hold down those 3 strings. They just don't make the ones with the little lever anymore, which might be good. I noticed when I was recording that video, it squeaks. I need to probably lubricate the little mechanism, but if you listen to the video, you might hear a little when I push that down, which, not super great for music. I don't like a lot of squeaks in my songs. All right. M. Smith says, as you are writing songs, how do you organize ideas? Chord charts? Do you loop and record in your DAW, notation software like Sibelius? It's a good question. So there are lots of ways to go about writing songs. I do one way, and I really have not veered from that way. I probably could and might unlock lots more creativity, but it's the way I've always done it, and it's the way I continue to do it. It feels like it works for me. I write with a guitar or a piano and a piece of paper for the most part. Occasionally I will write on just a text document. The only times I've done that is when I'm demonstrating, doing a training video. I did one for my VIP members where I'm writing a song kind of on camera. It's easier to just have it on screen on like a text file for them to see and read as I go about it. But for me, no, it's coming up with a guitar part, a piano part that inspires me, and then it's usually just kind of writing lyrics and music kind of simultaneously. So a lot of starting and stopping, putting the guitar down, writing down a lyric, trying that 1,000 times, and then changing things up a little bit more. Eventually, when it's done, I will have some sort of a chord chart. Usually it's a Nashville number type system where I'm just writing down numbers, which will allow me to easily change the key of the song later. If I realize that's too high for me, that's too low for me, I can change the key of the song, just scratch out at the top where I put what key it's in. If it's in E and that's too low for me, I can change it to G, and all the chord chart can stay the same. So if you remember back a couple years ago when I did my 50-song challenge, where I wrote 50 songs in 12 weeks, I just got a cheap little purple, just a regular notebook, paper notebook, college ruled, whatever, with a purple cover, and I wrote all the songs in there. So I wrote lyrics, and then above the lyrics, I just wrote out the chords, and that was it. And then the songs I picked, when I go to record them, and especially if I'm going to record them with other musicians, then I'll write out a proper chart for them, which for me is a number chart, single page, Nashville number system thing. Which, if you want to check that out, I have a couple videos about that for my VIP members in the VIP members area. You can get with me if you want to check that out. It's very cheap. It's like Netflix kind of monthly deal. You get access to lots of cool videos. But good question. And a lot of people write in their DAWs. They'll record stuff, and I think that's a great way of working. I just haven't gotten around to that yet. It's a little distracting for me. I really like to focus on the song, which is melody, cool chord parts, and lyrics, and I'm too easily distracted. Once I start recording, I just get in a different space. Other people are different, but that's just kind of where I land on it. And kind of a follow-up on that from Robert says, in songwriting, what is the most important to you? I.e., what do you do first, lyrics or music? 9 times out of 10, it starts, like I said before, with a riff or some piano part. It may start with an idea for a line in the song, so a single lyric or a single concept, but usually I've got to have, if I know kind of the general direction of what I want to talk about in the song, I'll start writing music that feels like that direction, and then lyrics will kind of come as I'm writing. So usually I'm playing along, I hear a melody, I hum a melody, I may have a few key phrases that I've been thinking about for the song, and I'll try to sing those, and then at some point something clicks, and then I've got either the first line of a verse, or I've got a part of a chorus, or the whole chorus, and then I'll kind of build the song out from there. It's a lot of just repeating stuff over and over until it kind of fits together in a way that seems to work for a song. Well, okay, here's one I don't know the answer to from Octafuzz Audio Works. Says, I've got one. What's the purpose of DC offset and or correcting that? I honestly don't know. It has to do with, I think, DC stands for direct current. So if a waveform has a DC offset, so let's say there was something weird with the power when you were recording that piece of audio, the waveform, it usually is centered if you're looking at a waveform horizontally, and typically the waveform is centered over the center of that horizontal track, right? So 0 is in the middle, and then it kind of expands out from there. I think with DC offset, if you don't use that, then the center of the waveform is actually up or down visually. I don't know what that really means or why it's important, but it's in every DAW I've ever used. There's always a way to remove DC offset. So it's kind of one of those nerdier things I've never used, and I probably never will. Unless you can look it up and give me a reason why, but it may have to do with power. If you're recording, the only time I could see maybe using that is if I did a live show where I'm recording at a venue and the venue has, crappy power, or, it's got way too many things plugged into the power, so the power's just not great. I could see that being an example where suddenly the DC offset thing might help, but I don't know for sure. How do you approach recording a song from scratch? This is from Arahant. What's up, Arahant? It depends, but generally, recording a song from scratch, first of all, I got to make sure the song is finished, meaning I've written all the sections of the song that I want there. Does it have a bridge? Does it not? And then the song needs to be arranged. So that means, is it typical, verse, chorus, bridge, chorus? Is there a double chorus? How many bars is the intro? What's the turnaround between the chorus and second verse like? Those types of decisions need to be made. And that's usually happening right as I'm getting ready to record. So that needs to happen. Or I may not want to plan it out and just play and see what happens. That's a legit way to work, especially if it's going to be something where it's just me and a guitar. I may just say, here's the rough structure of the song. I'm not sure how I want these transitions to go, but I'm going to hit record. That happened with that What a Wonderful World song. I played the intro, which was kind of a walk down. So a walk down from, E, D sharp, C sharp, G sharp, A, I think. So kind of walking down and playing around with that. But then at the end of the song, when I sang What a Wonderful World, I didn't want to go back to that walk down. I went to like a 1/3. So like an E over G sharp to an A to a B, and then played that a couple times. And that just came to me as I was playing it, and I just went there, and it worked out really nicely. Now, there's plenty of times where I go somewhere and that doesn't work out nicely, but I'm okay with those types of changes sometimes. But for me, it usually means I'm going to sit down. Most of the songs I write work well to some sort of a metronome or click track, so I'll figure out the tempo of the song, which is good to figure that out by singing the chorus, not just the intro, because that's typically the part with the most energy. And once I pick that out, I set the tempo, I get my headphones out, I set up mics, and I start recording the guitar or the piano, whatever the main instrument is. And then I'll go back and I'll record a scratch vocal over the top of that. Scratch meaning it's not really the final vocal. It could be, but I'm really just using it as a placeholder for me to know where I am in the song and to hear the song as I flesh out the rest. That's how most of my projects start. On some capacity, I've recorded to a tempo, a basic guitar track or piano track, and a scratch vocal, guide vocal, that I can then take that to my drummer or bring musicians in to record and build on top of that. But that's usually the foundation for me. People are talking about how the DC offset reduces some headroom. So yeah, go Google, see what happens. Y'all are asking some good questions, but I don't know. Someone's asking about Isotope's Neutron. I don't even know what that is. I've heard the name, but I don't know. One question, any thoughts on Harrison Mix Bus or any other DAWs that purposefully color your mix? I suppose Slate Virtual Channel and Studio One's Console Shaper do similar things. Yeah, I mean, I think, to me, I don't care if things are clean. Clean tends to sound sterile to me. I don't usually reach for a microphone that sounds super clean. I usually reach for one that has some sort of character to it. And that's why people love all the vintage hardware that you hear them talk about. It's not because it's super clean. Usually it's because it's doing something to the sound. So I think it's great. Do I think you necessarily have to have those things to get a good mix? No, but sometimes they can help you get there more quickly, or they can create a vibe that you weren't able to create otherwise. I don't use a lot of that. I do use the console shaper in Studio One, and it tends to make life a little bit easier, especially for bass. It smooths the bass out, makes it feel a little deeper and not quite as mid-range heavy when I bring that drive up a little bit, and everything just feels a little bit more full. And then I can start from there and get the mix how I want it. So maybe I'm not fighting the mix quite as much, especially in the low end when I do that. So something to mess around with. How do I start a music recording / mixing business remotely? I live in a fairly rural town with a limited amount of musicians, and good ones are far and few. I guess you mean few and far between. Well, go back and listen to the episode that I did on starting a mobile business, because I covered a lot of this there and answered a lot of questions around that. Let me look it up real quick while I'm talking and see what episode that was, but you can find it on YouTube. There's actually a playlist, if you didn't know this, for all the episodes of Ask Joe, and they should all be in there. I haven't checked to make sure they all get in there, but it's a good place to start. Let's find it. Where is it? There's one on setting prices, episode 176, which is helpful. Maybe it was a Simply Recording podcast, now that I think about it. Simply Record. Yes, it was. So I do a monthly podcast with Graham Cochran from therecordingrevolution.com. And we did an episode of the Simply Recording podcast a while back where we talked about setting up a mobile recording business. Yes, it's episode number 46. So if you go over to Simply Recording Podcast / episode 46, you will see that. And we talked about that. So Graham did a lot of this where he would have packages and set them up, and people would fly him out to come record their band and then take it back home and mix it. So lots of cool ideas there. But really, I mean, just like with any business, you've got to find a way to find customers. Now, if you can do it through the internet opens you up to anyone in the world. I mean, right now, as I am talking, there are people on this live stream from all over the world. Every hemisphere, almost every continent is represented just in the handful of people who have the time to be here on this live call. That's pretty cool. And I've somehow, over the years, whether you've just found me last week or you've been following me for 7 years, somehow I've connected with you to a point where you're willing to watch me stream a podcast live because it provides some sort of value for you. And so that's, some of you are customers. Some of you are my VIP members. Some of you, I've worked on your stuff before. Some of you may not be customers of mine, but you're big fans of what I do and you help promote my stuff. And I get customers through people that you know, all that kind of stuff. So it came through me creating something that was valuable for people and people coming to me. So I've gotten a lot of studio clients from having Home Studio Corner. Am I saying you need to go do that? No. But you do need to find a way to connect with other people. And if that means joining a bunch of forums of musicians and audio folks and making connections and relationships, that might be one way to do it. I don't think the answer is to figure out and put out Facebook ads and Craigslist ads and just wait for the money to come rolling in. I don't think it really works that way. And it could, but I don't think that's a safe bet, especially if you live in a place where there are no musicians. You know, the answer might be you need to move. If you really want to do this, you need to move to where musicians are, or find ways to connect with musicians through social media, through websites, through all those types of things. I mean, this is a relationship game. Client work is a relationship game, and it's about who you know. If you don't know anybody, then that becomes priority one. How do you know more people? And don't be the guy who, your first interaction with someone, you're asking to work with them. As I will tell you, I am not a big deal. I'm not an internet celebrity. I just happen to have a decent little following of people. And because of that, I do get people who approach me because they want something from me. And it almost, some of the times they don't even use my name. They just say, "Hello, sir, would you please be interested in giving me this?" And I'm happy to work with people. I like helping people and building relationships with people. But when you come to me and say, "Hey, Joe, love what you do. Could you do me a favor?" It's not a great, it's kind of a sleazy way to approach things, right? It's like, ask, you're single and you see a girl and you say, "Hey, would you marry me?" You kind of got to work your way up to that. So I feel like it's the same way here. You're not going to have a solution that's going to have you with a full-time book of clients in a month. But if you work steadily at building these relationships, then maybe 2 years from now, you might be close to having all the clients you can handle. It's not going to be a quick process. There's a reason business is difficult, because it's difficult and it requires some ability to stick with it and to continue to try things and to adjust and all that. So I hope that's helpful. I don't mean to be negative Nancy, but just yeah, I don't know. I think there's a lot of factors at play, but definitely go listen to that podcast. I think it'll be helpful for you. David says, I need to get a full band together for a wedding event. How many rehearsal hours do you recommend, or can you touch on the quality versus quantity when it comes to practice with a band? The huge variable there, two big variables. One, what kind of music will you be working from? So do you have charts that are done to the point of everyone in the band can look at that chart and know exactly what they're playing? Not parts, but they know that the intro are these chords and it's 4 bars. The bridge is these chords and it's 8 bars. I mean, do you have charts that are where someone like a Nashville musician can sit down and play it and read it and go to town? If so, then rehearsals become less important. That's one variable. The second variable, obviously, is musicians. If you have really good musicians who know how to read a chart, then you may get away with, running through all the songs once or twice in one rehearsal. It really depends. I really don't know if I have an answer for you. I would probably err on the side of more rehearsals than not, or at least have your first couple rehearsals with plenty of time between them and the event so you can add more rehearsals if you need to. But obviously, there's the whole idea of, are you paying people for the rehearsal time? If so, then more rehearsals is more money, so you got to balance that as well. But yeah, the more preparation you can put into it, the better charts you have, the better musicians you have, the less rehearsals you're going to need. Good question. Jeff says, when you take the song to the drummer, what will he have in his headphones? Just scratch tracks or fully arranged guitar, bass, and vocals? Most of the time, Jeff, when I'm working on and piecing a song together like that, where I'll do the scratch parts and then I send it to Tim for drums and then we do bass later, 9 times out of 10, he's just got a vocal and a guitar or a vocal and a piano, and he's hearing that as he's recording. So usually his mix is a whole lot of click track, the vocal, and that guitar or that piano. And then he builds his drums, and then we go from there. What's really important, and I was talking to Tim just the other day about this, what's really important is to give your musicians direction. Tim is a fantastic drummer, and he will come up with some amazing parts, but he's not the one who wrote the song, or he's not the one producing the song, and he may not know the direction you're trying to go with the song. So we had a session just last Monday, and I wrote a pretty big article about it. You can check it out on my website. But I went into it, and he had an idea, and he was starting to go down the path of one direction for a song, and it was just the wrong direction for the song. And that's not a jab against him. He just heard it one way, and the artist and myself were hearing it a different way. So it took a few rounds of going back and forth saying, no, not that, try this. No, not that, try this. What about this? No, that didn't work. Let's try this. And it's it requires some vision. So don't just, Tim was saying one of his big pet peeves is producers who say, I need you to record drums. And he says, what do you want? And they say, I don't know, you're the drummer. Figure it out. And they don't give any direction. That's kind of being a coward and being lazy. So don't do that. Kern says, would you recommend 2 or 3 good books dealing with business? Always looking for good new books. I've kind of gotten off I used to read a business book a week or two, like 50 plus a year, mostly audiobooks. I've gotten away from it because at some point you can be so consumed with getting ideas that you're not implementing them. But a few that come to mind, The Go-Giver is a classic. The One Thing, I've talked about that before, is a cool book. Anything from Seth Godin is cool, more like theoretical business stuff. And yeah, that'll work. Those are good. Is it advised to take frequent breaks when mixing only on headphones? But it breaks my flow. What are your thoughts? Yeah, I think breaks are good. I mean, frequent might mean every 3 hours. I don't ever mix more than probably 3 hours at a time anyway. I just get bored and tired. So, and I may get up like bathroom breaks. I don't think it has to be this big, huge break process that you have. But knowing your body, knowing my ears are tired or I'm starting to have a hard time hearing things, it's a great time to take a break or to call it quits for the day and come back another day. How important is the microphone in the whole process of recording? like, this is from a Foxesboro, like, would you rather buy a better microphone before getting a decent preamp? To me, it's not so much about the quality of the microphone as the sound of the microphone. So for me, if I had to choose between one $1,000 microphone or three $300 microphones that each sound different, I'm going to go with the second option. So I'd rather have a dynamic, a condenser, and a ribbon, all $300 mics, than have $1,000 condenser, because those ribbons and those dynamics are going to give me different sounds that I just can't get with one mic. How important is the microphone? It's very important, but it's not the most important thing. I do like the idea of getting a good preamp will make all your cheaper microphones sound better. So I couldn't tell you when should you get a preamp versus when should you improve your microphones. In a lot of ways, you could probably get away with never having a really nice high-end preamp and just use the stock preamps on your audio interface. There is something about outboard preamps, nicer ones, that gives you more tones that you can do a lot with. I do like them for that. So if you only have one microphone and that's where you're at right now, I'd get some more microphones so you have different tones. Then once you have a decent set of microphones, then maybe look at upgrading a preamp. Just one channel. See what happens. Let me see if I've got time for one more questions. One more. It says, Joe, why do you prefer Studio One lately over Pro Tools? Well, it's not so much lately. It's been a couple years now. I started using it as kind of just a favor to check it out, and I really liked it. And slowly but surely, I don't even have Pro Tools on my system anymore. So there you go. All right, that's all the time I have for today. Thanks for your questions. See you next week.